if you ask any South Asian, the level of pressure that is put on us as children, if you're not at the top law school, what are you doing?
Meetra Javed was meant to become a lawyer. Instead, she became a creative producer for global agencies and fashion houses, produced award-winning films, dabbled in directing, and self-published a book of deeply personal poetry and essays that caught the attention of Vogue and major New York galleries. How did you get comfortable with risk?
I bring this up to my parents now, but I'm like, everything you guys did was a risk. You like moved to America.
A Pakistani-American based in New York City, Meetra joins me on the pod today to talk about how she turned her back on the life that was laid out for her and built a bold, creatively fulfilling one instead. What matters more to you, being respected or being understood?
Being respected. I don't need everyone to understand me.
In a culture obsessed with success, this show explores an uncomfortable truth. It is failure, not success, that shows us who we really are and teaches us what to do next. I'm your host, Alanna Lynch, and this is Fail Up. I'm so excited to welcome Meetra to the first episode of Fail Up.
Hi.
So
I can't believe we're here.
I know.
This is crazy. Thank you for that amazing introduction.
You're so
welcome.
That
was very, very sweet. And yeah, I can't believe we're here. I'm just so happy I get to talk to you today. And I know this is also something that, you've been wanting to kind of do for a while.
Yeah.
And I think it's so, we're kind of both here in the spirit of collaborative New York.
Yeah.
Collaboration,
community. We've had a very crazy morning this morning, so we're all a little bit riled, pouring with rain. Took us all a million hours to get Ubers, but we are here.
Such is New York. Such is New York.
But I'm so excited to chat to you today. We're going to start everyone with kind of just super easy softball, just like how we met, our little meet cute.
Yeah.
What's your rendition? I wonder if they'll even line up.
I mean, I almost I want you to go first.
Well, it's funny. Whenever I think of you, I always think we worked together.
Yeah, which we never did.
I'm always we worked together at Chandelier. You were there all those years, and then I have to remember you actually never worked.
It's crazy. We actually haven't ever
never worked
together. Yeah.
That's just maybe my dream.
Well, we're here.
Yeah, we're here now. We're here now. We made it. But yeah, you used to come to a lot of the Chandelier events, right?
I came to one or two, which is also funny enough how I ended up
met your
my
husband. Yeah.
But yeah, I think, and that's kind of how I feel I met you maybe a year or two after that time.
Yeah.
Right?
And then we were neighbors.
Yeah.
Upper West Side neighbors.
Exactly.
I think that's where we rekindled. You are my dream, one of my dream collaborators.
Oh,
I've been trying to force Meetra to work on a creative project with me.
I mean, we're here
for years. So this is the first step to getting her in the room.
Yeah, but we both wanted to do the podcast thing, so I'm very excited. It'll
happen.
Yeah,
I'm going to convince Meetra to do a podcast with me one day. How does it feel to be the first guest?
Honestly, I'm really happy to be the first guest because I feel it's I feel I already know you. I can be myself. And I've also never done this before, so I'm kind of
Is this your first pod?
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is your first pod.
Yeah. And it's wow, what an elaborate
God,
setup.
I love it.
It's such an elaborate setup. So.
Oh, I love it. My first question for you is, you've got so many different roles, like what we went through in the introduction. Executive producer, director, and now published author, which is incredible, by the way. Congrats.
Thanks.
I'm just curious, which one of those feels like home right now to you?
I think for me right now, I feel producing has always been something that I'm constantly working on a couple of different projects at once. So I think that will maybe always be a very big part of what I do. Mm-hmm. And I think since the book came out and it was independently published and it was this thing that was kind of just sitting with me for so long, I actually just have not wanted to kind of write something new. I feel I'm still in the phase of kind of sitting with the fact that that project is out. And so I actually think directing and producing has been a little bit more of kind of the things that I want to focus on, just because naturally there's there's creative understanding when you're on the other side, and when you are somebody that has a little bit more of like a visual thinking process, you can kind of transfer that information. So like I think those two maybe kind of are what I feel the most right now. Not to say that I don't think I'm going to go back to writing.
You'll write another book.
Yeah, or
It'll
like
happen.
something. I think I like really want to work on a feature screenplay, but I think right now I'm like producing a lot of mostly commercial stuff. And then I have like a couple of narrative projects that are
fun.
Yeah. So
wait, what's your dream screenplay?
Ooh, okay. So
we're gonna pitch this live.
So
pitch this live. Someone can buy it.
There's a movie that actually Robert Redford made I want to say it was the 1980s. Called Ordinary People, and it's this like really kind of simple story about a family and loss, and it's very Americana, and I kind of want to do a rendition, like
amazing,
like a version of that's like kind of from my perspective. Yeah.
I love it.
And I think, that was like one of my favorite movies. So I've always just like wanted to figure out how I could translate that to something that's a bit more something that I can relate to.
Yeah.
You know,
is this something you've started writing, or this is still in the dreaming phase?
I think I have like a little bit of a loose framework, but I think like some of it feels too close to my real life. So it's like, I kind of I think it's going to be one of those things that like makes me like 10 years, takes 10 years to like do. So I'm like, I'm noodling with the idea, but it's like an idea that I've had for a long time now.
Okay. I love that. I didn't know that. So that's a little secret we've just dropped.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. First one. This is a good segue actually into the next question, which I was just really curious about. You're Pakistani-American. You talk a lot about your cultural heritage like online, and it seems to be kind of a big part of who you are. And I'm just curious in how it's helped shape your career. It sounds like it's already influencing kind of your creative projects and your decisions. But how do you think it's shaped your overall career?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think like how the culture has actually maybe impacted my career. I can't say, but I think there's like a connection just naturally as it comes to just being an immigrant and having an identity that almost spills over into the work that you do, because it's just like so inherently built into you. And then and I think like because I'm an immigrant, I wasn't born here, and I kind of had to see my parents work through the system, and I also was kind of like always interested in trying to meet other people that were creative, and there's it's like there's a very small percentage of us, so it's like you're kind of trying to assimilate your American identity to this Pakistani identity, and then figure out like where that fits in the creative spectrum. And I also think like one of my first ever, and I think I probably told you this at some point, but one of my first ever, like I was like 19, where like I just finished college and I found this job on Craigslist. I found this job on Craigslist, and it was like documentary transcriber, and it turns out
I didn't know.
And it turns out like the documentary transcribing job was for Vice, and it was for like these Pakistani like little mini clips. And I remember like going to this is like back in the day, when like, and I remember walking into the Vice office and like kind of just like meeting this like kind of small group of like other Pakistanis, and it turned out that like one of the co-founders of Vice was a Pakistani guy.
Okay.
And it was the first time in my life that I'd ever seen anyone in media who like looked like me.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is actually something that I could potentially do, because before that I'd never seen anyone in America in that space, so it didn't feel real. But yeah, I think that was kind of how like everything, I don't know if that answers, but it's like how everything kind of linked.
I was just curious, and like I was curious if it kind of shaped any of your career decisions, but it sounds like this was even your entry point into the industry. Has it ever kind of shaped the stories? I mean, it sounds like it's already creatively starting to shape the stories you want to tell.
I think for like my book, there was like a lot of that. Like I think I could wholeheartedly say like parts of my book were very much seeped into my identity because it's such a more vulnerable thing. Whereas like obviously a lot of like the commercial projects and like even some of the narrative shorts, like not necessarily, but I do think, you know, one of the more recent projects that I worked on is about, you know, kind of a Pakistani character. And it was something that I produced, but I think I'm naturally just drawn to those projects because I'm like, I can really
connect it.
Yeah,
Totally.
Exactly.
Totally.
Yeah, so.
You also seem really incredibly focused on building community. Like that's something I feel like some of the first conversations kind of you and I had around that, and I know we both feel strongly about that. Why is building community so important to you?
Oh man, I mean, I just think it's like fundamental core of like everything.
Yeah.
You know, I think people are like, the worst thing that can happen, I think, is like when people get isolated and people get kind of cornered or left alone. And I think like sometimes it really is just like creating a environment that gives and takes in a way that's kind of communal. And I also think it's like such a core part of producing and like,
really?
And like, you know, and just like any creative project, it's like I like to work with other artists and I think I'm constantly learning from them. I feel like most of the time I'm the dumbest one in the room, you know. I'm like what you're doing is really cool.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
But that's
like,
always a good place to be as well when you're in a room where you're learning from everyone else.
Yeah, and there's so many cool creative people, you know.
But I love that you've said that it's also it's because you want everyone to be connected and not isolated, but also it's kind of a fundamental part of how you do your job. And I've noticed that on your Instagram, right? You'll be like, it's like every day you're like, I need someone for this thing tomorrow. Like sometimes it's like, I need this super niche thing in 2 hours. And I'm like, the girl has got people on this community.
It's true. But I also just feel like
do people follow through?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like everyone, you know, people are looking for work and like, that's just the give and take of the world that we live in. And it's like, I think that's like a core way to just help somebody. Totally. It's like, get people paid.
Yeah,
like if you can get people paid, get them paid. Like,
get people paid, they'll stay in your community.
Yeah.
I would love to talk about Standard Deviation, which we spoke about in the intro, which is this really, really beautiful book of poetry and essays that Meetra published last year. I wanted to can I tell my quick little Standard Deviation story, the text that I sent you?
Yes, you totally can.
I know you published it on your social, but so now I'm going to reveal myself.
You're fine.
But it was a few weeks ago. I was home at my place in Melbourne, and I was having such a shitty day. You know those days where you just like, I was just feeling so like down and shitty, and I was trying to distract myself with all these other things. And then I was like, at one point I just was like, okay, I need to just take a second. And what I did is I like went outside the back of my house. I have this really, really big, beautiful olive tree in my backyard. I sat under the olive tree. I picked up a Diet Coke with ice, crucial. Like if you can have like a Diet Coke out of a can with ice, I mean, that's healing in and of itself. Good. A little ciggy, a little like Vogue Slim ciggy. Apparently they're back.
I'm loving this Australian life on you. I'm just going to throw that in there. But yeah, keep going.
I'm not drinking, so I need to like, I need some ice. I need my little Vogue Slims. And Meetra's book. And it's funny, I've had, you know, you gave me a like first release or whatever you call it of the book. So I've had it for a really long time, but I've never read it front to back. It's just not, for me anyway, it's not how I've ever experienced it. But it was in that moment where I sat outside with the book and I just kind of flicked through and I read a bunch of poetry and essays and I was like crying in some of them, but also just, I don't know, man, it was so healing. It was so healing because it's so vulnerable and so real and all this, you know, a lot of talk about family and and loss and grief and like personal growth. And I just, congrats for writing such a incredible book that can actually truly pull someone out of a funk, you know?
No, but like, thank you for sharing that too with me, because I feel like that's kind of, you know, it's like not every piece is meant to connect with someone, but I think even if someone got something small out of it,
Totally.
that feels
Yeah.
good for me.
I think it's also
you
the
know?
combination, like your book should be read with like those three things.
Yeah.
Like you should be drinking
Set
a
up an
Diet Coke and
environment.
smoking a CD.
Yeah, or
and-
like whatever your like, drug of choice is. It's like Diet Coke, caffeine. I don't know what else you want people want to do, but yeah.
I mean, yeah. So like, what pushed you to publish this at this time? I know you've been working on that book for like 10 years over time, but
Yeah.
what pushed you to publish it? And also like, how did you have the courage to publish something so vulnerable?
Yeah. I mean, it was really hard. I independently published it, which was like a whole other thing. Honestly, I think I actually had given up on it for a while. I was like, I don't know. I was like,
Why'd you give up on it?
Well, I had all this work just kind of sitting, and even though some of the pieces were like published in journals and had some level of like an academic validation, I never went to grad school, got my master's in writing or anything like that. And I think also like my career as like a producer was kind of developing, and I was like, oh, I might have to pick a lane. And I think I just kind of was like, who's gonna read this? Like you just have those moments where you're like, who's gonna read this?
Yeah.
And then I think it was something that I always wanted to do. It was something that I wanted to, from a very, very young age. Like if you ask people that knew me in like 8th grade, they'd be like, you were writing poems in 8th grade.
So like, was there a moment where you got over that kind of internal voice that was telling you that like no one's going to read it? Like, how did you push past that?
Honestly, I have to give credit to my husband on that one.
Oh my God, I love.
Yeah,
what
like because I think like there was a moment where I was just like, I don't know, like I don't know what to do with all this work. And he was like, you literally can just do this yourself. Like you want to put this out there. The work is done. You just, and you know how to do it all. So it's like, what are you scared of? And I was like, scared of being perceived and scared of like people knowing this like really deep side of me. And ultimately I was like, well, kind of need to, you need to be vulnerable and you need to like take a risk sometimes. And like, it was also something that I always wanted to do. So I kind of found a print producer and a design director, and I wanted to work with a bunch of other artists. And like, there's some really cool other artists I got to collaborate with, but like, I got to make it on my terms.
Yeah.
And I think that's what feels so good about it. Like, even though I didn't have this like fancy publisher, because I was able to like work with the people that I wanted to work with, own the creative. And I think that idea of like, what will people think? You very quickly have to let that go.
Yeah, you have to let it go.
You just have to let that go.
But can I ask, when you were saying you were worried about how you were perceived, can you unpack that for me? Like, what were you thinking they were going to perceive you as?
I don't know. I think there's like, like even though it's like poems and essays and poetry is so abstract, I think there's a little bit of truth to everything, right?
Yeah.
And I think, we work in an industry that's so about being buttoned up. And I think it's so about like, kind of not sharing those parts of you sometimes. And I think like, I just didn't want to mix up those two versions of myself. But I think that's what keeps people from being who they truly are, which leads to unhappiness. So I was like, I'm just gonna do this, and like people might not like it. I'm just gonna do it.
And how did it feel after you did it and you realized you don't give a fuck what anyone thinks?
Yeah, I mean, honestly,
How does that feel?
It still feels pretty surreal.
It does,
It still feels pretty surreal.
Do you still feel nervy about what people think about it?
No.
Less so yet.
No, I think I'm
once
just
it's
like,
out there, it doesn't matter
I think
anymore.
once it's out there, it's like, people should, I think everything that is art is subjective.
Yep.
And it's like, everyone will have an opinion about it. People might absolutely hate it, even your best friends, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Like,
and then some people will have the moment that I had, that you're just like,
exactly,
it's
like
so transformative, and you're like, you can't really plan for that either. It's like
exactly
the good or the bad.
Exactly.
A couple other little questions for you before we get into the meat of kind of the conversation around failure. Who do you look up to in the creative industry?
Ooh, God, that's a good one. In the creative industry, who do I look up to? No, I feel like a lot of the people that I look up to are like dead, but
They could be dead. They could be dead. Or like, you know, who inspires you?
I don't know. I think I have so many. Like I really like Clarice Lispector. She's like a writer who has passed on. I love a lot of like Irani directors and filmmakers. There's actually a poet, I don't know if I'm saying her name right, Faro Farrokhzad, and she was like a poet, but she also had made this film back in like the 70s. And I mean, like, I don't know, there's very like old school people, like the Lou Reeds. Like, I feel like I'm really inspired by a lot of writers currently in the creative industry. I'm like, I don't know. It's like funny. It's like it ranges from like Kendrick Lamar to like
that's a good one.
Like it's like anyone that's just doing themselves. You know, like.
And is that what the kind of theme is for you? Kind of the authenticity.
Yeah, for sure. I'm inspired by so many people. I mean, everyone around me. So many of my friends are artists, like you know, textile designers, sculpture artists, and I'm like, every day, like, you guys are literally unbelievable.
You have a lot of really like inspiring creative friends for sure. We're going down the failure rabbit hole now.
Okay.
I think my first big question for you is just kind of, you know, how do you define failure? How do you think about it?
I think there's like two types of failures. I think like one is kind of like a moral failure. I think there's like kind of, to what extent are you willing to do something that disregards so many others to lead to a success? And that is like what could be considered like the moral arc of a failure. And I think the other side of failure is like, did you or did you not live up to maybe like your own expectations versus like, you know, it's like, of course we all want a level of validation, but I think the single validation sometimes like just comes from knowing how did you actually do what you told yourself you would do. So I think there's like, I love that. Both of those things, you know.
Do you feel like they have equal weighting to you? Like, do you feel like one of them is riskier than the other?
I think it's like I'm somebody that really believes in integrity, and so like I think like, yeah, you know, in this crazy world, you know, trying to maintain integrity and like kind of, I think for some reason that maybe appeals more to me. Like I do think that like checking in with yourself as often as you can to make sure like you're not lying to yourself about why you failed, because I don't think you fail something unless you have kind of been dishonest with yourself in some way. Or like maybe that's just like the way that I think about it.
No, I love that, because then you're not you know, you're not failing against arbitrary markers. Right. Like you didn't hit some sort of goal or reach some sort of level of financial success or whatever. Totally. It's kind of what you've kind of promised to yourself.
And not to say those things are not real.
Totally.
But, you know.
What comes up for you even when you think of failure? Like I know when I even was thinking about this podcast, like when I think of it, it almost like I have a knot in my stomach.
Yeah.
And for me, it's shame. Like shame is like, it's the shame. It's the embarrassment comes up. But what comes up for you?
Honestly, I think like there's, disappointment. Definitely shame, frustration. I think frustration is like a big part of it. And just sometimes just anger, you know? Just like, oh God, like.
Fuck this.
Why did that happen? Like, it's so... We all feel it, so it's like pretty universal. Yeah.
What's the biggest one of those for you? Anger?
No, I don't know if it's anger. I think it's like, I don't know. I am kind of a competitive person. You know, like I am kind of a competitive.
Really?
Yeah, Giles will tell you that.
That's
too.
something new. I never really got that vibe from
I'm like
you.
so
because you're so
myself.
supportive and you're such a girl's girl and you're always lifting everyone up around you. Like I don't get competitive vibes from you at all. In fact, the opposite. I get the vibe that you want everyone to succeed and like all ships will rise?
Totally. No, I do feel that way. I mean more like I'm very competitive with myself.
With yourself. Yeah,
like,
you have high expectations.
Very high expectations for myself.
Yeah.
But like with other people, I'm like, everyone's just doing their own thing.
Yeah.
So
We're all doing our thing.
Yeah.
So how do you work through some of like that frustration?
I mean, talking to friends like you,
Yeah.
who are like, have so much experience in like all of this, you've had such amazing positions at such amazing companies. And I think sometimes like, obviously talking to your friends, but also just like coming to terms with the fact that like everyone experiences that at some point.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, physical things, like I'm a runner. So like anytime I'm like having a really bad day, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go run this off. Run the emotion off. And it's like, it's
Cool
such
down.
a physical thing. I think talking to friends and talking to family usually gets me out of like whatever that thing is I'm harping on.
And do you have a different relationship with failure with all your different roles? Like, does it sting more if you fail as when you're producing, on someone else's kind of time and money? Or does it sting more if you fail from a creative point of view? Or is there even a fail, or can you fail in either of those? Like, how does your relationship change?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think as it pertains to creative failure, it's like, unless you have an entire team that you're working with, like you're kind of not letting anyone down but yourself. So it's like, if it's like something that's more of a production, like you are letting a bunch of people down. So like producing, if you kind of screw that up, you're letting a lot of people down. And you're letting, there's definitely more like stress with that. Whereas like, I think like working on my book or like being creative in so many other ways and doing things for myself, I would say like there's way less at stake because I'm like, this is so authentic to me and it doesn't bother me as much. I mean, like you still want the validation.
Yeah.
But like at the same time, it's not impacting like an entire livelihood of like 300 people or whatever, like however, many people you're working with on a project.
And I imagine it also looks really different as well, right? Like it's almost like, can there even be failure? Like failure is so much part of the creative process. So it's like, do we even consider that a failure along the way? And then when it's released out in the world, it's kind of like what we were saying before. Like some people will love it, some people will hate it. You just need to be happy with it yourself. So as long as you feel good about if you put it out, in alignment with your integrity and your values, then that's the success, right?
Totally.
One thing I'm really curious about, so the audience, like the Melia Futuri audience is really international, which is amazing.
Love that.
Love it.
We love the Aussies. I love the Aussies.
They love you too. You're married to like a semi-Kiwi, so you're
I'm
almost
like halfway
honorary.
there.
He's half Kiwi, right?
Yeah, New Zealand is Kiwi, right?
Yeah, half Kiwi.
Yeah.
Close enough.
Yeah.
I'm always just interested, even from a leadership perspective, like how it's different culturally and obviously with failure as well. How do different cultures think about failure and how do they bounce back from it? Like I know that if I even think about like Australia versus America, like that feels really different. Like the Americans kind of lean into failure and almost celebrate it. It's that like Silicon Valley startup-y, fail fast, fail often type vibe.
Yeah.
The Aussies are much more risk averse, I think, much more kind of.
That's interesting.
My question to you around that is like, do you feel a difference between kind of, you've got this Pakistani-American heritage that's obviously quite diverse, and like, do you see a difference between the two sides of that heritage in terms of how you think about failure?
That's such a good question. Honestly, if you ask any South Asian, the level of pressure that is put on us as children, like, the minute that you're like born, it's like, oh, my kid's gonna be a doctor, my kid's gonna be a lawyer. And it's like, that's beautiful in some ways. It's like they have high hopes, but I think there's like pressure. The pressure is on pretty early. I think that, and also I think like I have to, I'm an American as well. Like I grew up here. But I think that like the idea of, I think just like how I saw my parents kind of assimilate themselves to this country and really have to be like the top, like, 2% of their country, which is a third world country, start over in Brooklyn and like raise 3 kids while like becoming medical professionals. I think like the bar for me was always just gonna be high because they were against all the odds. And like for me, like it's like having that heritage and then having this environment where within South Asian culture, which is, sometimes it's kind of toxic in some ways, because it is, the pressure to succeed is very high, but like it's kind of limited in very specific directions. So it's like, if you're not at the top law school, what are you doing?
Yeah, but that's like, interesting. So like, do they, like if they have super high standards, I imagine then, the risk of failure becomes so much higher because there's such a narrow view of what they deem as successful. So if someone doesn't become a lawyer or a doctor or whatever, for sure, then I mean, how has that impacted you, who's taken such a creative path?
I mean, I think it was really hard in the beginning, for sure. I think my parents like had no idea what the hell I was doing. I think they were like, go to law school. I like took my LSAT. I took my LSAT. I like studied for my law school exam.
I never knew
there was like a record of this, like I swear. Like people don't know this, but I studied science in college, and like I just got really lucky with like how I navigated things. But there's so much stigma around the industry in general and like the creative world and like what it allots you and what it doesn't. I think a lot of times South Asian families just don't have exposure to that, especially immigrant families in America. I think it's maybe a little different, like if you're, in India or in Pakistan, you've kind of been in that environment and you can, figure that out. But I think specifically here, there is like, I think it's changing now. I think it's like really changing. I think like my parents have like very much like slowly started to understand. They're also, both psychiatrists, so it's like they just have no choice but to understand. It's like they just have to understand. But it's been interesting. It's been a long road, I will say.
Has that pressure, from kind of studying your earlier exams, like has that transferred into into your creative projects?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like, weirdly enough, like I think it's all kind of like comes from a singular place of like, I think sometimes it takes a while to figure out what you're good at. And like how to use what you're good at and apply it to something that you enjoy. Like when I was studying science, I really loved it. I love science. I'm actually like somebody who really thinks that like science, biology is poetry. Like, like, I don't know, like Andrew Bird, he's this musician, but he uses so much like scientific terminology in his work. And like, that was always inspiring to me. I was like, this guy is one of my favorite musicians, and he's like writing songs about like osmosis. It's like, oh, this is kind of cool, man.
I never knew this about you. I love that I'm learning this.
So like, it has, but it translates in kind of a different way where like I think a lot of just my thinking is really holistic. It's really, really holistic because of all of these things that I've kind of been exposed to.
My next question was about risk, and I think it's interesting because it sounds like you were raised in a very risk averse family, potentially family unit, potentially. Is that, correct? Like high pressure, high stakes, high expectations. And I feel like if you're in an environment like that, you generally, not necessarily encouraged to go out and take all these bold risks because you don't want to take the risk to go be the painter. If you want to get into law school, you have to kind of put your head down and study. But yet you've now found yourself in a career where, you are taking really big risks all the time, whether that's with your book or kind of some of your creative work or even producing. I mean, you're working on some really high pressure projects where you do have to kind of take a risk on whether it's kind of getting locations or
whatever it is.
Like I'm just curious, like how did you get comfortable with risk if you were growing up in an environment that wasn't necessarily encouraging in that way.
Well, it's funny because like I bring this up to my parents now, but I'm like, everything you guys did was a risk. You like moved to America and you left your families behind and you didn't even know English wasn't your first language. So everything you did was a risk. So you kind of, taught me that you only succeed if you take a risk. You don't actually get anywhere without taking a risk, without sacrificing something. And I think like, even though like, parents like to protect their kids from maybe going in a specific direction, like the reality is like if you see people that you love set up a precedent of like the risk that got them from this to this and it worked, you're kind of like, how can I emulate that in a different way for myself that works for me?
Yeah, I think seeing the evidence is super important, right? If you see someone take a big risk and it worked for them. Like I've seen you publish your book, you know what I mean? I'm like, oh, she's published a book. It's gone so well. That would give me confidence to like do some sort of creative project. You need to like see people around you. Interesting. So do you feel like then our relationship with things like failure and risk, do you think that's kind of inherent to how we were raised? Or do you think that that's something we can kind of learn along the way?
I think it's something you can learn along the way. I think it's like failure and risk is like, it's also like, how often do you put yourself out there? And how often do you get,
rejected?
Just like, get out of my face. I don't want to hear from you. Like a lot.
It's like exposure therapy.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you just get more comfortable with failure and you get more comfortable with risk taking. But I think like the idea has to kind of come from you have to be willing to put yourself out there. And I think that's both like sometimes environmental, but also I think it could come from just having a really strong support system. I think like I'm privileged enough to have that, but I don't think everybody has that.
Do you feel like you ever get completely comfortable with failure?
Yeah, actually, I think you do. I think you do. I think, because I think if you've like been rejected enough, like, I mean, like even with like the making of the book, right? Like it was like, like I sent some of the work out, even though like the specific pieces got published in journals, like the overall book didn't really get accepted by like any major publisher.
So you did try and go down that path initially
for like a small period of time, because I was like, like this is probably the right way to do it. It's like to have the validation of the institutions to like kind of go that route. And, I think everybody that I was talking to that was like in the publishing world or in the writing world was like, first of all, there's no money in this. Second of all, it's like, you could do this on your own. So don't worry about it. Like I was hearing that from like publishers at publishing companies and writers who have their books published by these major companies. So I was like, optically it doesn't look so great, but who cares?
Yeah. Were you thinking of self-publishing before, or did that kind of rejection? No. So that's so interesting. Like that rejection opened up this other opportunity for you, and now I feel like you're so passionate about helping other artists self-publish their work, and it's opened up this whole other side of kind of your like process and also passion.
Just like share your work, period. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't even need to be like published, just sharing it.
But how do people get comfortable with it? I mean, you're such a confident person. Like how does someone get comfortable, even if it's, I don't know, they want to release their first Substack, even as simple as that? Like how do they get comfortable with this, with putting their work out there, knowing it could be rejected?
I think you have to completely block out, again, just like who your audience is. Like I was so surprised by the people that bought my book. There was like random, like a random collector apparently in like Singapore bought my book, like a book collector. I was like, how the hell did this guy find my book? And like, so you think it's just going to be your friends, but like there's a lot of like random people. And I think, forget about your audience. Just do like what you, for if it's like a Substack or if it's like something that's a creative project, I think you should just share what you want to share.
Yeah, I agree. I've even found that with starting my own business, because in the beginning you think you like, I remember, I think I thought there was going to be certain people that would be drawn to it. Right. And there was some people that were and some people that weren't. And I was like, oh, I kind of thought those people would be drawn to this and they weren't. But then I found all these other people that some were actually in my world already, but just, you know, not as close to, that I was super engaged in it, that respond to everything I put out, that I've developed now these relationships with through it. Amazing. And you've found new people. Yeah. And I've kind of learned that through this process too, that you have to just put your work out there and the right people will find you. Yeah. And but it's hard because then you're always thinking, like, it's funny, there's almost these caricatures I have in my head sometimes. They're almost caricatures of real people. Yeah. That they're the ones in my mind, like, oh my God, what are they going to think about this post, or what are they going to think about this newsletter? Yeah. It's like, and why are you so hung up on what these specific people are going to think? Because they're the people that haven't, like, they're the people that haven't, you know, maybe do they see this as a failure? Have they accepted what I'm doing? You know what I mean? But there's such a small, there's such a small kind of portion, and then they've got all these other people who are, so, you know, but I think it's like you can't, like, you do have to validate that there are always going to be specific people who we care what they think. Yeah, and how do we get over that? How do we get over it? I don't think you ever get over it. You're just like honestly, if there was like somebody who I really admired who was like, yeah, this work is trash, I'd be like, damn, like this, you don't like my work? God, okay, like I gotta rethink about a couple of things, you know? But like, the funny thing is we also might think they're thinking it's trash, but they just might be busy. Or not looking at it. Or you have to let it go. Yeah, you have to let it go. You have to let it go. But you know, it is real. It's a real feeling. So and you have to just get comfortable that not everyone is going to be your audience, right? Totally. Your audience will find you. Yeah. We've touched on this a little bit, but I'm curious, I guess this connects back to the vulnerability you had in your book too, but your Instagram is also super vulnerable, right? Like you share a lot of yourself on there. You share kind of like how you're feeling and like what's going on with your day. Yeah. Does that vulnerability come naturally to you, or is this something you're kind of consciously thinking about? I think it's pretty natural. I don't think it's something you could force, to be honest. Like I think like I like to share to connect, if that makes any sense, so that like other people feel more comfortable. And it kind of helps, I don't know, I think as like an artist of any sort, you kind of feel the urge to share, even when maybe it doesn't work in your favor sometimes, but you feel the urge to share, and like it helps you connect with other people. I also just think vulnerability is the only way like anything real happens in the world. Yeah. So, but I like what you said around vulnerability is a way to connect with people. Yeah. And a way to build community. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Which is just ironic, right? Because we're worried about putting it out there. What are they going to think? But actually, that is what draws people in. Absolutely. That's the connection I have with you when I'm reading your book, Under the Olive Tree. You know, that's the moment of connection, and that's the vulnerable. It's just such a double-edged sword in that way, you know? Yeah. Yeah. It's like if you can get past the sticky piece where you really don't want, if you can get past and put it out there, then you're like good. Then you're good. Then you're good. Like, that's the hard part. Yeah. You're also, when you're on your Instagram, you know, some of your vulnerability I find is like you're doing a lot, right? You're juggling a lot. You do a lot of things. You're doing a lot. Yeah. She's busy. She's busy. She's like producing. She's like, you know, constantly running around. You're doing your creative work. You've got your book. You know, you're also a super supportive wife, friend. You show up for your friends all the time, you know, growing an incredible baby inside you. Like there's a lot going on. And every now and then I feel like we get this glimpse into kind of the toll it's taking on you. And just like the burnout, right? Like every now and then there'll be a post of you lying on bed with your vitamins being like, today's not the day. Yeah. Yeah. And I just, I guess my question for you is, do you feel like that creative burnout is just kind of par for the course of living this creative life? Or is this something that we should be trying to avoid? I don't think, you know, as much as I would like to, people might hate me for saying this, as much as I believe in balance and as much as I believe that like wellness and like self-care and all of those things come first, and they really do. Sometimes it will be the case that you're working on a project and it's a 15-hour day,
3 days in a row and the whole team's in it together, or it's a 4-day project, or whatever, however long it is, and it's like, yeah, it does take a toll on you. It takes a toll on your body. It takes a toll on your mind. It takes a toll on your relationships. It takes a toll on everything. And like, I don't think we can like pretend like it doesn't. And I think like for me, it's another way of just relating to other people, right? Like, it's like, I think, yeah, like there's days that I am really burnt out and I'm really tired.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just, want to go be in the mountains and like sit in a lake. But
is it healing for you to, it's because some of the thread as well I'm hearing is that the vulnerability is, your way to connect and build community, but also it's kind of healing for you. So I wonder if part of your way of healing your burnout is to almost share it. Yeah,
I think so. I also think that like sometimes I put it on myself, I think I'm kind of like, it's hard for me to, if someone needs my help, or like there's like, and I'm getting better with those boundaries, but like if there's like, I try to give people time of day.
You do a lot for people.
I try to give people, I feel like people did that for me. So it's like, you kind of have to pay it forward.
Yeah. It's the community. I love it. You're about to become a mom to a really beautiful baby girl.
Crazy.
This kid is so lucky. My God, this kid's going to just like be born into the coolest household.
I don't know. So crazy.
At some point you're going to have to sit down and talk to her about all this stuff, right? About failure, about risk, vulnerability, all these things.
Yeah.
Is that something you think about? And like, what would that conversation look like?
Such a good question. Well, I think like for one, I'm definitely trying to not project anything. I'm trying to be very conscious of like not projecting what a success and failure looks like on paper, because I think every child and every person has the right to develop in the way that blossoms them in their best way. But I think that like, I think my number one thing would probably just be that I've already started thinking about is like, how can you raise somebody that's self-aware? It's like, I think like self-awareness kind of extends into everything else, whether it's like, quote unquote, a failure of some sort or a success of some sort. Like, I think there's something about just kind of helping a child be maybe confident and self-aware for them to figure out those successes and failures on their own, because like I can't protect someone from failure. I'm like, I wish I could, but I can't. And I think that's actually the thing that sharpens your intuition. I think the more you fail, your intuition gets sharpened, and the more that you are likely to grow.
I love it. I love also what you said around, you can't protect someone from failure, and they just need to, it's going to happen. It's not if it will happen, it's when.
Exactly.
And it's like, if you have the self-awareness and to be able to work through it.
Yeah.
I love it. Such a nice way to end on before we get into our quick fire.
Oh God, quick fire. Okay, I'm so scared.
Don't overthink them.
Okay, I'll try.
Are you ready?
I overthink everything. So.
Okay. What are you most afraid of? Being disliked or being ignored?
Being ignored.
What's worse for you? Public embarrassment or private regret?
Private regret. Private regret.
When you experience failure, do you overshare or disappear?
I think I disappear.
Where do you go?
I don't know. I think I go to like a book or go to the movies. I go to get myself completely out of my mind, and or I go hang out with my husband and my family, because they're like my rocks. So
that's kind of nice, because it sounds you have this community that you come back to that you do share quite a lot with, right? So it's almost like the process of kind of the initial failure being processed with your close people and disappear, and then come back and kind of share the learnings with everyone.
Totally. It's very distilled, it's like very distilled.
What's a risk you took that everyone advised against that turned out well in the end?
Going into the creative industry. Just going into the creative industry, period.
Totally, yes. Sounds like that was advice from your parents gave you. What's one thing about the creative industry you'd change overnight if you could?
Access. I think access. I think I like wish kids could see themselves reflected in places and have access in a way that was a bit more democratic.
Dead or alive, who are you inviting to your dream dinner party?
Oh my God. I mean, definitely Lou Reed.
Instagram or Substack?
Honestly, I kind of like Substack a bit more these days. Yeah, I like reading other people's. I don't use mine as much anymore, but I should. But I really like catching up
Reading,
on a good
yeah.
read. Yeah.
Best career advice you've ever received?
Best career advice I ever received. I think it's something like, I feel like it definitely came from my dad. I feel like my dad just one day, like, I remember him telling me, like, you know, there's going to be people that are going to be like so much more talented than you, so much smarter than you, and in every single room, but like the one thing you can control is how hard you work and how aware
Love
you
it.
are. And like, I feel like I kind of like take that with me because like there's only certain things that we have control over in our working environment. So I feel like that was kind of the best advice.
I love that. And you are super self-aware and a really hard worker. So I
Thanks, Dad.
Thanks, Dad. Okay. Creative fulfillment or financial stability?
Both, baby. You kind of want both of those, right? Like,
Yeah. But if you had to pick, that's obviously the dream to get both of those.
Yeah.
But if you had to pick,
oh, that's really hard. I mean, I don't know. I am somebody who I believe that like in order to kind of do things and find creative fulfillment, you do need to have financial stability. So I don't know. That's a hard one.
Okay.
Yeah.
What matters more to you, being respected or being understood?
Being respected. I don't need anyone. I don't need everyone to understand me.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's such a good way to end on because you are so respected by so many people.
I don't know.
And we got through our first episode.
Oh, we did
I'm
it.
so
This
happy.
is
And
so
I was
crazy.
you've been the best guest, and I'm so grateful for you coming on
Thank
first
you
and
for
like
having me.
helping us brave the storm here in New York City this morning and get us all
God.
set up.
I know. I hope hopefully there's no torrential downpour still.
Yeah.
But, yeah, this has been so lovely.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No worries. If you liked this episode, please hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. While you're at it, please drop a comment and let me know what resonated with you. I'd love to hear your take. And as always, I'd be so unbelievably grateful if you could share your favorite episode with a friend. It really is the only way an independent podcast like this can be discovered.